The great council chamber floated above a blue star, held in place by ancient machines older than memory. Inside it, many species gathered in silent rows. Their shapes were different, their skins bright or dark, smooth or rough, but they all shared one thing. They believed they were wise. At the center stood the elders. They were old even by long-lived standards. Their voices were slow, heavy with history. One elder stepped forward and spoke in a calm but grave tone. He warned the council about humans. He said humans were not the strongest race. They did not live the longest. Their technology was not the most advanced. But he said humans adapted faster than anyone else. When they lost, they learned. When they suffered, they changed. When they were pushed into a corner, they became dangerous. Many, and the council reacted with quiet amusement. Some shared looks of disbelief. Others clicked or hissed in soft laughter. To them, humans were new and divided. Humans argued with each other. Humans fought among themselves. Humans were emotional and weak. The elder continued anyway. He said humans did not fear loss the same way other species did. Humans accepted pain and used it as fuel. They could endure conditions that broke others. He ended his warning with simple words. Humans were unstoppable if threatened. The council dismissed the warning. A human envoy stood at the edge of the chamber. His name was Jin. He was not important by rank, only by presence. He listened without anger. His face was calm, his hands steady. He had learned long ago that shouting never changed closed minds. Beside him stood Era, a human observer. She was there to watch, record, and learn. She felt the weight of the room pressing down on her. She noticed how the council looked through them instead of at them. To the council, humans were a test, not partners. When the meeting ended, decisions were made quickly. A border human colony was chosen. It was small, distant, and lightly defended. The council believed it would be a simple lesson, a show of power, a way to force humans into obedience. Jin and Era left the chamber in silence. Outside, stars stretched across endless dark. Era finally spoke. She asked if the elders were right. Jin answered softly. He said the elders were always right about one thing. Humans survived. Far from the council, the human colony drifted around a pale planet. It was a working place, not a rich one. Families lived there. Workers mined, repaired, and built. Children played under artificial skies. They believed the galaxy was dangerous, but fair. The attack came without warning. Alien ships dropped from folded space like falling blades. Defense systems activated too late. Energy fire cut through orbital stations. Communication towers vanished in light and debris. The sky burned. On the ground, alarms screamed. People ran. Jin was there on a routine visit. He moved fast, helping guide civilians toward shelters. He did not wait for orders. Era followed him, recording everything with shaking hands. Fear filled her chest, but she did not stop. The invaders moved with confidence. Their weapons were precise and overwhelming. They believed fear would end resistance. They believed humans would break. They were wrong. Human security forces fought even as they fell back. Small ships rushed forward, drawing fire away from evacuation routes. Pilots took impossible risks, flying damaged craft straight into enemy lines to buy seconds. On the ground, engineers rerouted power by hand, while under fire. Jin saw people refuse to leave others behind. Medics dragged the wounded through smoke. Workers used tools as weapons. Even when defenses failed, humans did not stop resisting. Era recorded not just the destruction, but the choices. She saw a human pilot crash his ship into a larger enemy vessel to disable its weapons. She saw a group of civilians hold a tunnel long enough for children to escape. None of it was planned. All of it was instinct. The invaders noticed the delay. Their commanders questioned why the battle was taking longer than expected. Humans were losing, but they were learning. Each failed attack taught them something new. After hours of fighting, the colony fell. Fires burned where homes once stood. The invaders declared victory. They sent reports to the council, claiming the humans had been crushed, but Jin and Era were alive. They escaped on a damaged transport, its hull cracked, its systems failing. Inside, survivors sat in silence, faces pale, eyes empty but awake. Jin moved among them, speaking quietly, reminding them they were not done. Era began sending data the moment communication cleared. She shared enemy patterns, weapon behavior, and tactical mistakes. Human networks absorbed the information instantly. As the transport jumped away, Jin looked back at the burning colony. He felt grief, but also resolve. He knew humans would not forget. They never did. Across the galaxy, the elders watched the reports with heavy eyes. They saw what the council refused to see. Humans had lost a battle. They had not been broken. The damaged transport drifted through deep space, running on weak power and patched systems. Inside, the survivors moved quietly. Some slept from exhaustion. Others stared at the walls, replaying the fall of the colony in their minds. No one spoke loudly. Grief filled the air, but it did not turn into surrender. Jin spent his time checking on people. He listened more than he talked. When someone asked what would happen next, he answered honestly. He said humans would learn. That answer gave comfort, even if it promised no safety. Era stayed near the ship's data core. She worked through pain and fatigue, sorting everything she had recorded. Enemy weapon cycles, shield timings, ship movement patterns. She marked mistakes the invaders did not even know they had made. Her hands shook, but her focus was sharp. When the transport finally reached human space, rescue ships surrounded it. Medical teams rushed in. The survivors were taken away, but the data stayed with Era. It moved across human networks within minutes. Every fleet command, every research station, every defense hub received it. The human response did not come as loud speeches or bold threats. It came as work. Factories changed schedules overnight. Engineers took apart, captured debris from the battle. Pilots studied recordings frame by frame. Tactics officers rewrote training programs. Civilians volunteered for support roles without being asked. Jin was called to a strategy center near Earth. He stood before commanders and planners. They did not see him as a hero. They saw him as a witness. He described the enemy calmly. He explained how fear had not stopped humans, and how sacrifice had slowed a stronger force. The room stayed quiet, not because of despair, but because everyone understood the meaning. Humans had faced something bigger than them and had not folded. The invaders watched from their own territory with growing confusion. Their reports said the humans were broken. Yet human space did not fall silent. There were no surrender signals, no desperate calls for mercy. Instead, human patrols increased. Supply lines hardened. Small defense platforms appeared in places that had been empty before. And enemy commanders studied the changes and felt unease. Humans were moving too fast. Loss should have slowed them. Instead, it sharpened them. The council met again. Some members began to question the victory report. Others still believed the humans were bluffing. They approved a second strike, larger and more direct. This time, they would crush human resistance completely. The target was a trade route near a populated system. The plan was simple. Destroy the route. Show dominance. Force compliance. Human sensors detected the fleet early. Jin stood in the command center as alerts spread. He watched calm take hold instead of panic. Fleets moved into position. Civilian traffic was redirected with precision. Defensive lines formed, not to hold ground, but to bend and adapt. Era joined the command team. She pointed out enemy habits already visible in their formation. She warned where the first heavy strike would land. Human commanders listened. When the enemy arrived, space filled with light and fire. The first exchange was brutal. Human ships were still weaker in raw power. Several were lost in the opening moments. But this time, humans did not fight like before. They did not rush forward. They pulled back, drawing the enemy into prepared zones. Small human craft darted in and out, striking exposed systems and vanishing. Mines activated in patterns the enemy had not predicted. Communication jamming hit at precise moments. Breaking coordination. The enemy pushed harder, angry that humans were resisting again. That anger became a weakness. Jin watched as a human squadron sacrificed position to trap a larger enemy ship in overlapping fire. It exploded, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. For the first time, the enemy lost a major vessel to human tactics. Era felt a cold calm settle over her. This was working. Humans were learning faster than the enemy could adjust. The battle lasted hours. By the end, the trade route still stood. Human losses were heavy, but the enemy withdrew. Not in victory, but in uncertainty. Across human space, the results spread like fire. Humans had held. Civilians watched the news feeds in silence, then returned to work with renewed purpose. Recruitment lines grew longer. Research funding doubled. Artists painted ships and faces, not as symbols of war, but of endurance. Jin addressed the survivors of the first colony through a secure channel. He told them their loss had meaning, that their stand had changed everything. Many cried. None turned away. Era archived the second battle beside the first. She added notes. Enemy hesitation. Reaction delays. Emotional responses. She understood now. Humans were not just adapting to weapons. They were adapting to minds. Far away, the elders watched again. This time, some council members listened to them. The elders spoke with no pride, only truth. They said humans had entered the phase no one survived against. They said humans had stopped asking if they could win. They were now asking how long it would take. The weeks after the second battle were quiet on the surface, but human space was alive with motion. Ships moved between systems without rest. Shipyards burned with light day and night. Every loss was counted, studied, and answered with change. Humans did not hide their weakness. They exposed it and worked on it together. Jin traveled between command centers. He did not give orders. He carried experience. Wherever he went, people asked the same question. What did the enemy fear? Jin always gave the same answer. He said the enemy feared what they could not predict. Era remained deep inside the data networks. She worked with analysts, pilots, and engineers. She broke battles into seconds and movements. She showed how the enemy reacted slower when plans failed. She showed how anger and pride shaped their choices. Humans listened. Training changed across human fleets. Pilots learned to fight without fixed plans. Commanders were taught to lose control on purpose, letting units act freely. Ground forces trained to operate with broken communication. Every failure became a lesson. Civilians were part of it too. Factories accepted new designs without complaint. Workers learned new skills in days instead of months. Farmers adjusted supply chains to feed distant fleets. Children watched and learned that survival meant effort. The enemy watched all of this with growing concern. Their scouts reported strange behavior. Human ships looked uneven and imperfect, but their movements were sharp. Human defenses shifted constantly. No pattern stayed long enough to be exploited that an enemy commander requested reinforcements. The council approved, but doubt crept into their voices. This was not how a weak species behaved. The next clash happened near a dense asteroid field. The enemy chose the location, believing it would limit human movement. Human fleets arrived anyway. At first, humans appeared disorganized. Their ships spread out unevenly. The enemy advanced with confidence, opening heavy fire. Then the field came alive. Human ships used the asteroids as cover, weaving between them with practiced ease. Small craft hid their signals behind rock and debris. Traps activated as enemy ships followed too closely. Explosions echoed through space. Jin watched the battle from a command ship. He saw human pilots make choices no program could predict. One ship cut engines and drifted silently past enemy sensors. Another used debris as a shield, pushing it forward with controlled fire. Era tracked enemy reactions. Their formations tightened in fear. Orders overlapped. Delays appeared. Humans pressed the advantage. They did not chase fleeing ships. They focused on control, disabling engines, cutting communication, leaving enemies alive but helpless. When the battle ended, the enemy had lost more ships than in any previous engagement. Humans lost some too, but fewer than expected. The galaxy noticed. Neutral systems began to watch human borders more carefully. Trade routes shifted slightly away from enemy control. Quiet messages arrived from distant species asking questions about humans. The council called another emergency meeting. This time, the elders were not alone in their concern. Reports showed a clear pattern. Each human defeat made them stronger. Each victory made them smarter. Some council members argued for total war. Others argued for negotiation. The room fractured. The elders spoke again. They said humans were still holding back. They said humans were learning restraint, even as they learned war. Meanwhile, humans prepared for something larger. Era uncovered a key detail in enemy command structure. Control flowed from a small number of central nodes. These nodes believed they were untouchable. Humans disagreed. Plans formed quietly. No speeches. No announcements. Fleets repositioned under the cover of routine patrols. Special units trained in isolation. Jin was asked to lead a task group. He accepted without pride. He understood the weight of it. This would not be a defensive action. This would be a message. The strike came suddenly. Human forces appeared deep inside enemy-controlled space. They avoided major systems and struck command relays, supply depots, and communication hubs. Each attack was fast and precise. Enemy response was slow and confused. Their fleets moved to protect the wrong places. Humans vanished before counterattacks arrived. Era monitored the chaos. She watched enemy networks strain under pressure. Orders conflicted. Panic spread. For the first time, the enemy felt what humans had felt. Civilians in human space followed the news carefully. There was fear, but also pride. Not pride in destruction, but in competence. Jin's task group completed its objectives and withdrew. Losses were minimal. The damage was deep. Across the galaxy. The truth became harder to ignore. Humans were no longer reacting. They were shaping the war. The elders addressed the council once more. They said the warning had passed. Now there would be consequences. In human space. Jin and Era stood together on a quiet observation deck. Stars moved slowly beyond the glass. Era asked if this path could still end without ruin. Jin answered after a long silence. He said humans would always try to stop before destroying everything. But he added one thing: if forced, humans would not stop at survival. They would end the threat forever. The enemy tried to recover control, but the damage ran deeper than broken stations and lost ships. Trust had cracked. Command nodes argued with each other. Fleets waited for orders that came late or not at all. Every delay gave humans more space to move. Human space did not celebrate. There were no grand parades. Instead, there was careful planning. Loss lists were reviewed. Families were informed with honesty. Support flowed quietly to those left behind. The work continued. Jin met with fleet leaders in a small room, far from crowds. He spoke about limits. He said humans must decide what they wanted from the war. Survival had already been secured. Now the question was stability. Some commanders argued that the enemy must be pushed until it could never rise again. Others warned that total destruction would poison the galaxy against humans. The debate stayed calm. Humans had learned to argue without tearing themselves apart. Era presented her findings. She showed that the enemy relied on fear to maintain order. When fear failed, the system collapsed inward. She suggested a different kind of strike, not against cities or civilians, but against symbols of control. The plan took shape. Humans would advance openly, not hiding this time. They would move slow enough to be seen, fast enough to avoid traps. Every step would send a message. Humans were not hunting. They were approaching. The enemy council panicked. Emergency sessions lasted for days. Some leaders demanded negotiation. Others called for forbidden weapons. Old rivalries resurfaced. The unity that once made them strong became their weakness. The elders watched with grim certainty. They repeated the same warning, but now it was too late for prevention. Only damage control remained. Human fleets crossed into contested space in wide formations. They did not fire unless fired upon. When attacked, they responded with precise force, disabling weapons and engines, then moving on. Cameras across the galaxy recorded everything. Neutral worlds saw human spare stations once enemy fire ceased. They saw medical ships follow behind warships, offering aid to wounded enemy crews. Confusion spread faster than fear. Jin led the central fleet. His voice carried across secure channels. He ordered restraint even when losses occurred. He reminded crews why they were there. Ira coordinated information releases. She allowed enemy civilians to see the truth of each encounter. No lies, no exaggeration. Just facts. The effect was slow but powerful. Enemy crews began to hesitate before firing. Some powered down weapons without orders. A few ships surrendered outright, unsure of what humans would do. Humans took prisoners carefully. They treated them firmly but fairly. Every action was documented. The enemy council fractured completely when several high command leaders fled their posts. Systems declared autonomy. Supply lines broke down. One final defensive line formed around a major command world. It was heavily fortified. The council believed the stand would restore. Control. Human fleets stopped at the edge of the system. Jin ordered a halt. He sent a message instead of missiles. He spoke plainly. He said humans did not seek their destruction. He said humans would defend themselves without limit, but they would not rule through fear. The council delayed their response, arguing until words lost meaning. Then the forbidden weapons activated. Energy storms tore through space, striking human ships without warning. Several were destroyed in moments. The restraint shattered. Jin closed his eyes for a second. Then he gave new orders. Human fleets advanced with full force. The battle was short and brutal. Humans targeted weapon systems first, then command centers. They used every lesson learned. Enemy defenses collapsed faster than predicted. Era watched casualty reports rise. She felt the cost deeply, but she did not look away. This too had to be remembered. When the final command tower fell silent, the enemy fleet scattered. Some fled, some surrendered. The command world went dark. Silence followed. Across the galaxy, broadcasts replayed the moment. Not as a victory cheer, but as a warning. Humans held position. They did not occupy the world. They did not destroy it further. Jin sent one final message. He said the war could end now. He said the choice belonged to the galaxy. The elders spoke to the council remnants. They said the lesson was complete. Humans had shown restraint, patience, and force. They had done all three better than expected. Era archived the final battle of the campaign. She labeled it carefully. Not as conquest. Not as revenge. She called it proof. As human fleets withdrew to defensive lines, the galaxy adjusted. Borders shifted. Alliances reformed. Jin stood alone on the observation deck again. The stars looked the same as before, but he knew everything had changed. Humans had not just survived, they had been understood. And those who still refused to understand now knew one truth. Humans would always choose peace first, but peace would never be their weakness. The galaxy did not return to normal after the fighting stopped. It changed its habits. Trade slowed in some regions and grew in others. Borders were redrawn without formal war. Species that once spoke loudly now spoke carefully. Humans remained quiet. Their fleets returned to defensive space and stayed there. Ships were repaired. Crews rested. Families reunited in silence and tears. Memorials were built without grandeur. Names were spoken aloud so they would not vanish into numbers. Jin attended many of these gatherings. He never stood above others. He stood among them. When asked what came next, he answered with the same steady voice. He said humans would watch and wait. Era finished the last archives of the war. She organized them so anyone could understand. There were no heroic edits, no removal of mistakes. She believed the truth was enough. Across the galaxy, councils met again. This time, humans were invited early, not as observers but as equals. Jin attended one such meeting. He sat quietly as species argued about security and balance. When he finally spoke, the room listened. He said humans did not want to lead the galaxy. They did not want to rule. They wanted stability, fairness, and space to live without fear. He said humans would defend those things without apology. No one laughed. The elders spoke one final time before stepping away from public life. They addressed the galaxy, not just the council. They said the warning had never been about power. It had been about nature. They said humans were unstoppable because they accepted change. They said humans turned pain into memory and memory into action. They said any species that forced humans into struggle would only sharpen them. The message spread far and wide. Some species sought alliances with humans. Others kept distance. A few tried to provoke quietly, testing limits without open threat. Humans noticed all of it. Era helped design new observation networks. These systems watched behavior instead of weapons, patterns instead of threats. Humans no longer waited for attacks to understand intent. Jin helped shape new defense doctrine. It focused on flexibility and restraint. Every plan included a path to stop before total destruction. Years passed. A small crisis emerged on the edge of known space. A minor power attempted to seize a neutral station. Panic spread among nearby systems. Old fears resurfaced. Humans responded quickly. A single fleet arrived. It did not fire. It positioned itself between the aggressor and the station. Jin transmitted a short message. He said the action would not continue. The aggressor hesitated. They remembered the war. They withdrew. The station survived without a battle. The galaxy noticed again. Humans became a reference point. When disputes rose, others asked how humans would respond. When fear spread, leaders asked if human fleets were moving. Humans did not enjoy this role. They carried it carefully. Era once asked Jin if this was what the elders had feared. Jin thought for a long time. He said the elders had feared humans being forced to become something they never wanted to be. He said the galaxy had been lucky. On a quiet world rebuilt from the ashes of the first colony, children played under open sky. The air was clean again. Buildings stood stronger than before. Memory stones marked what had been lost. Chin visited the world once more. He walked alone through the rebuilt streets. He felt the weight of the past, but also the strength of survival. Era joined him later. She asked if the warning would be remembered this time. Jin looked at the sky filled with stars. He said memory fades, but consequences last. Far away, new civilizations rose and old ones aged. Stories spread, changing with each telling, but the core remained the same. The elders cautioned them. No one listened, and the galaxy learned why it should have. Humans did not conquer the stars. They endured them, and that endurance reshaped everything.